Hi everyone, this is Marina from frocksandfrolics.com. I draft sewing patterns and I do matching video instructions, as you might know if you watch this channel more often. And I want to show you my new project, which is a romper. It's a long sleeved romper, just a really classic shape, but it's got all the bells and whistles, a really good well-fitting item, which is what you're looking for. And we've got a really fantastic little ebook on what fabrics are really suitable for a romper, and you can download that from our blog, which is great, and the link to that is in the description as per usual. And I'm also going to do some more, not just this classic romper, but I'm at the moment also working on a little summer romper like this. And I've used cam snaps down the middle, and it's going to have like little puff sleeves, as you can see here. And I want to make these legs into like little bobble legs as well. So that's in the works next. I'm also working on some dungarees and stuff, but I'm not going to show that just yet. It's just so exciting. So for today, for this video, I'm going to show you a trick that you may not know, and that is how to put in the poppers of this romper. So without further ado, I think we're going to pop over to the workshop and I'm going to show you how to put those snaps in. So I'll see you over there, and if you want to know more about this romper, then go over to the Academy. And the link is in the description as well, where you get the complete course for the whole romper and also the pattern. So let's go on over to the workshop. Now we're going to put the poppers on our little romper. And to get this right, I want to tell you a few things really. These are my Dritz pliers, which I love and I use. And you can also get from Dritz these snaps that go with it. But as you can see here, one of these small packets only has about 7 sets in them, and they are between $6 and $7 each. So I think they're way too expensive. I would recommend that you get some cheaper ones with your Dritz pliers from Amazon. All the links are in the description, and leave me a comment once you've done it and tell me how you got on. My packet here was only $13. There are 200 pairs in that snap set. The Dritz pliers have an attachment which is called size 15, and that means it's 9.5 millimeters or 3/8 of an inch. With your Dritz tool, you also get the attachments for the purl insertion, which is really quite nice, and they need to be 10 millimeters. Now let's have a look at the snaps in more detail. You have always two that have prongs to make a set. They're like little teeth which will grab into the socket or the stud. And this here is the stud, and it's got a little raised part there which will fit into the socket here. And from the back, both of these parts look almost entirely the same. So that is what you always need to see when it's inserted into your Dritz tool. So the red part of your Dritz pliers always holds the prongs, and the lower part will hold the socket or the stud. Put the stud with a raised middle down in it. And when you do the socket, you need to have this part here facing down, and that small little rim always needs to be facing up. I also want to show you these little flower-shaped prongs, which come with the set from Amazon. Mine fall out, so I had to be careful that I always hold the red part underneath it. The snaps that I use here actually ought to be 9.5 millimeters. I bought the 9 millimeters, but they worked fine too. But if you have got your set at 9.5 millimeters, it won't fall out and it'll work fine. If you accidentally have the 9 millimeter set, well, it still works. Just you need to swap your pliers over so that the prongs are underneath it, and then that works fine too. And I think they're super pretty. Really, really nice. And I just want to show you how that looked on the final romper I did. Now I have made a template for my particular pattern. If you don't have a template like this, you can just work it out yourself. I put 2 snaps into the cuff I put one snap just above it, and then you had those two snaps on either side of the center at the top. And then the rest of them are just spread out evenly. So how you'd want to do that is up to you. But with my pattern, of course, you all got the template. And you can see here that on the front facing, you have got the stud and the ring is visible from the outside. And on the opposite side, you have got the ring on the underside and the socket will face upwards. There it is. And when you fold this over and you close it, it's in the perfect position. That's what we need to watch out for. Now let's see how we actually do this. It's not difficult. Once you've done it once, you'll be all right. The first thing to do is to put some holes into your template, and I'm using the Pro Master, which is actually for leather birds and stuff. All the links and the description, because I think it's a really good tool. And if you are frustrated with the ones you got in other shops, mine from Joann's, and always testing Joann's here, but it didn't work, and this is fantastic. You also get some eyelets with that and a tool, not to be confused with the tool that I had from China for my snaps. That was awful. The Pro Master tools all work really well. And again, they don't pay me for it. I just decided that I was going to give them a leg up and put the link in there in case you want to get that one too. So now I can put my template on and I can mark it. You can use tailor's chalk, or you can use an invisible marker, a textile marker, you know, where the ink goes away after a while, and just mark this so that you know where it goes. And again, I've got one just above the seam there and two on the actual cuff. I'm also going to do the other side. So I just swing it over, put my template back on and mark it again. So this is really simple. If you've got a template, you know, just use it. You've got one from either side, then a couple going down, and then you've got one just above the seam and two on the cuff. It's always the same actually on every size, but the higher the size, obviously, the more snaps you will have in it. And I'm now ready to actually put in my snaps. This is where it gets really exciting. So grab your snaps, and we're now starting with the studs, and we need the stud obviously, and we need the part that has the prong. So the prong part always goes in the red part of the pliers. And now I'm going to get the stud, and the raised surface is fitted into the mold that your pliers have. And as you can see here, and this is really important, you need to be just ever so slightly off the edge. Maybe I was a little bit too far in here, a little bit slightly off the edge. That's a matter of taste actually. See what you think. I thought that that looked just right with what I was doing. And I hold it slightly sideways so that you can see how I line this up. I do that with every snap, and it's actually, once you've done it, really simple to do. So you've got two on the cuff, and then the next one goes on just above the seam. This is why it's so important that you cut back the seam allowance in there so that it's not in the way. But these snaps actually went through. I forgot to cut it back on this, my very first romper, and it still went in fine and didn't come off after. So there we go, done. And I now work my way up. And again, you've got the prongs in the red part. The stud goes into the blue part. And the important thing is to catch it there in the center of that facing. Once you've done a few, I think you will find your own little mark for it. And I hope that I can take the fear out of it. I was very fearful when I did my first ones. I didn't know which size to buy, and I didn't know which tool would be good. So hopefully now, knowing that you can get the Dritz tool, which works fantastic, and some really
cheap and lovely snaps. You hopefully will be making loads and loads of rompers without any issue at all. So I've put all of my snaps into the front. Brilliant. And I can check it and make sure that they're in the same position, and they are. Now I'm going to do the ones on the binding. This is where we have to be careful because this is how they go together. So make sure that you have your socket on the top side of the fabric and your prongs go onto the underside of the fabric. And if you think I won't get this wrong, I actually did. The very first trial romper, I did that wrong, and they were really difficult to get off. In fact, I had a bit of an accident and cut into my fabric. So no, make sure that you don't get this wrong. You can use the template also on the back binding, but you don't have to. And in fact, if you do this for the first time, I probably wouldn't use it on the back as well, because as you can see, you need to shimmy it round a bit and it's easy to get that wrong. The other option, which I think is better if you've never done it before and you want to make absolutely certain you get them exactly opposite to the ones with the stud, then you want to mark the center front and the center back, put those on top of each other. Put the whole thing on top of each other here and make sure that the romper is actually right side out at this point. Fold back your facing from the front and then mark just the opposite onto the binding of your little leg. When I first looked on YouTube actually to find a method, I found nobody did that. They were just showing you, oh, here it's done. And I thought, well, that's no help to man or beast. So I hope that this is really helpful to you, and you can leave me some comments if this is what you've tried out, and if you have any suggestions, let me know as well. That lines up exactly now. Now on the back of it, I want to show you that it does work with the template. So on the back I'm using the template. So up to you which one you want to do, but you have to kind of force the binding round a bit, and that's where I see the difficulty, just in that very first snap at the top. Lower down I don't think it's an issue at all because it's straight. So mark this, and now I'm just putting my facing on top in a minute so that we can see if it actually lined up. And I'm using white tailor's chalk, which is not so easy to see, but it does in fact line up just as well. But you have to work fairly tidily, and I have to say that I'm always for the safe route, so I would do the other one personally. So you have to decide. Turn it over so you have the underside here of the binding, because that's the way we're going to put them in. Prongs go down here. And now I'm going to put the socket in. Don't forget you need to have just that tiny little rim part showing. That needs to be facing up. Make sure that you get this right. And now I'm just going to put those in. You can also see at the bottom there where the seam allowance was folded over, why it's so important that it's like really close to the edge, so that you can cut it back and it doesn't interfere with your snap. There we go, just press it in. The distance here between either side is a little bit smaller than it was on the facing. So when you put yours in, what you want to do is make sure that you hit the center. So let's have a look at this again. I pop it over where my line is, and now I'm almost on the edge with the red part, and the blue part sits there, but almost on the edge. There we go, and that fairly much hits the center there, and you won't be able to get those off. Find a spot that works for you. maybe your binding is a little bit wider than mine or a little bit less wide. Maybe your binding is not exactly that measurement at the end of it, especially if you've never done this before. So make sure that you hit the center, whatever your width of the binding is. And I just work my way around. I keep checking actually. At some stage I won't check anymore, but this is now the third time I'm putting snaps in and I'm still checking whether I do it right. So back down the other side. Yep, in the center. Go a bit further down. I actually also did some research on snaps, obviously, and I looked at what other people in industry do. I found that the snaps in the clothing, the children's clothing, was actually very much like the snaps that I got from Amazon, rather than the Dritz ones. I think that they are what the industry uses. I did hear from other people that have been testing that the Dritz snaps had come back out and we don't want that. So these actually worked really well. They're not as shiny, but boy, do they work. So here you can see again how important that is to cut it back right to the quick. There we go. And now comes the big moment where I can close this up and see how it all worked. And I can tell you now that it did work. Obviously, when I did my little polka dot one, it looked a lot better because that was the second one I put in, or the second romper I've made, and you do get better every time. And this is the end of it, YouTubers. I hope that you really enjoyed this. If you want to make the romper and get the full course, you know where to go. It's at the academy.frocksandfrolics.com. The link, as ever, is in the description. I cannot wait to make more. Next project up is a pair of dungarees, and it's got some fantastic methods too. So stay tuned for that. That's the next one up. Bye for now.